When they see me, they know that every day when I'm breathing, it's for us to go farther, you know? Every time I speak, I want the truth to come out. You know what I'm saying? Every time I speak, I want to shiver. You know, I don't want them to be like, they know what I'm going to say because it's polite. They know what I'm going to say. And even if I get in trouble, you know what I'm saying? Ain't that what we're supposed to do? I'm not saying I'm going to rule the world or I'm going to change the world, but I guarantee that I will spark the brain that will change the world. And that's our job, is to spark somebody else watching us. We might not be the ones, but let's not be selfish, and because we're not going to change the world, let's not talk about how we should change it. I don't know how to change it, but I know if I keep talking about how dirty it is out here, somebody's going to clean it up.
And now he's been promoted. His job, principal.
Welcome to the Sneaker Principal Podcast. This is Uche Joku. And before I even get started here, I just want to make sure that all my audio is working and everything's looking good. Man, good evening. It is 11 o'clock. Today is August 20th. And I usually don't go on this late, you know, especially when I do a podcast. But however, as you can tell from the title of this particular podcast, I had to do this one. This is definitely kind of a last minute decision to do this particular episode, but it is needed because I have to definitely without a doubt express my gratitude to the LinkedIn community, especially. Those of you who've been following my my account, my posts on LinkedIn, man, what's happened was not the intention at all. For those of you who are not aware, I made a post last Sunday night, I believe, and all it was just me trying to find a space to kind of like put out there what I was thinking in my head, you know, what I was feeling in my heart, what I was going through physically, emotionally, spiritually, with my resignation from a position that I worked so hard to attain, something that I wanted for such a long time. As a matter of fact, when I first interviewed to be a New York City Teaching Fellow, which is the alternative certification program that I came into New York City schools through, during my interview, my in-person interview in Manhattan, I had flown out from Los Angeles to Manhattan for this interview to do a demo lesson and then to sit in for a group interview. And one of the gentlemen who interviewed me, I don't remember his name. I remember his face very clearly. So if you see this video and you see my face and you're like, hey, you look familiar, and maybe it's you. I just remember sitting there and we were told that this gentleman was a recent New York City Teaching Fellows. I want to say about 4 years removed. and he was now an assistant principal. And it was weird because I sat there and I was like, wait a minute. He was where I'm sitting right now. He's an assistant principal. And what that did, it planted a seed in my head. I'm the kind of person that I believe that whatever I do, I can't just do it at one level. I have to multiply 10x, however you want to put it, what I'm doing to be the most effective as I can in that thing that I'm doing. So seeing him motivated me. I thought to myself, wait a minute, wow, this is not just like, they need teachers in New York. This could be a career. But even still at that moment in time, I was still thinking, as those of you who've been following my story, I'm going to go to law school. I'm going to do 2 years and go to law school. But what ended up happening was that I, stayed. I became a dean at my first my first position I was hired to in New York City schools. Then from there, a lot of things happened. Dean, assistant principal, middle school, high school, and eventually became a principal. And over the course of 17 years, I will probably say that I gave all of myself to my work. All of myself to my work. And not just the work, but to my students, to my school communities, to my parents, to my colleagues, to my teachers, to my principals. I was a little militant. I was the kind of person where I really believed that the hardest job in my building was the principal. And some of you might say, wait a minute, how do you have that mentality going into a school system as a teacher, as a dean, and so on the teacher line? Why would you believe that? Well, I believed it because coming from the military, I had a deep belief that the commander of your unit or the leader of your organization needed your full support. So that's how I moved, how I rolled as I was prior to becoming an administrator. So when I became an administrator, I didn't take the job lightly. I knew the amount of what's the word? The amount of responsibility that was on my shoulders as a school leader, and I gave it my all. And as time went on, and I started to realize that it might be time for me to step away from it. And for many reasons, I got married, I had young children, and I was realizing the amount of time I was spending away from them. And then not only that, also, the wear and tear of the work itself on your psyche, on your body, on your overall, well-being. And a lot of school leaders and even teachers and educators in general in the trenches, we endure so much. But also there's an expectation that you endure until the end. And I don't believe that. I believe that it's very important to give yourself to your work, but then at some point in time, you have to ask yourself, are you still being as effective as you want to be? And that's what I had to come to a decision. Was I being as effective as I wanted to be? Especially seeing now that, the old me that would get to the building at 7 o'clock in the morning and then be out the building by 10 o'clock at night, I had other responsibilities now. And I'll tell you this, the pandemic made this so much more obvious. Because when my daughter was born, prior to the pandemic, leaving home before she would wake up and coming home after she'd be asleep was kind of a norm that shouldn't have been a norm. But then when my son was born, literally March 3rd, and like about a week or so later, roughly about 2 weeks later, the world shut down, school shut down, I had to work remote, and I ended up working remote for a year and a half, practically. And I got to see my son grow up and be part of the watering and the sowing of seeds into his life and my family in general. I started to realize there's an imbalance here that I had to address. And I went into this year, really asking myself, how sustainable this was going to be for me moving forward. I still feel like that I'm still a very effective, impactful leader. But however, at what sacrifice? What was I sacrificing to be that? And the time came for me to make that decision, and it was not easy, but I made it. And when I made that decision, I submitted my letter of resignation on July 11th, 2022, a few weeks ago. There was so much in my head and in my heart that I needed to get out. And I couldn't find a verbal word to put out there. So I started typing on my phone. I pulled up the notes app on my phone and started typing. And then after I typed, I said, you know what? I got to put this out there. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to put it on LinkedIn. And the reason I picked LinkedIn is because I had come across so many pieces written by other professionals that I thought were so impactful on me. And I thought maybe I'll just put this out there. Maybe somebody might find this helpful in their journey. I did not expect that what happened. But I'm so happy that I did post it. I'm so happy that I've been able to get such amazing feedback and so much love from my colleagues. People I've never met before, but people that understand the work and the journey of being an educator in America, of being, even more so, being an administrator, being a principal, being an assistant principal, being in charge of systems, and understanding that, especially being a principal, the loneliest job in the building. Because when I was told this early on in my career, that you would never understand what it means to be a principal and the amount that's put on your shoulders until you're in that seat. You would never understand that. And I thought I did. As an assistant principal to, 5 principals. I thought I did. But when I finally was in that seat, I realized, wow, no matter how much I try to explain it to you, you will never understand unless you've been in that seat. And no disrespect to anyone out there, it's just a fact. And I'm pretty sure most principals, if not all principals, will agree with me on this. And yeah. And I do, and I also want to acknowledge the things that have been written to me, the comments that I've read, the conversations that I've witnessed happening between people within the posts and within other people's comments, the direct messages that have been sent to me, and what people have shared with me, everything from their angst and their loss and their journey and their pain and what they've sacrificed to be able to do this work. You know, the number of people who have told me that I walked away from my principalship. I just never said to anyone my real reason. I said I retired, or I said I found a better opportunity. But it was literally what you said in your post. And I'll be honest with you, I've been reading and I've been trying my best to respond, and I'm still trying to get through it, because first of all, this is the first time I've ever done anything. I posted anything on whether on YouTube or any other social media platform that's had such an incredible response. And I definitely want to honor everyone who's responded to my post by responding back to them directly, whether it's an extended post or just a thank you, so you know that I read it. Because I want to honor the time that you've taken to read what I wrote, and then even respond to me, or send me well wishes and thank yous and good lucks and blessings. I am so humbled, to the point where I've looked at my wife and asked her, what did I do to deserve this? Because too many of us walk away, maybe not necessarily broken, but we walk away with so much on our shoulders and our hearts and our minds that never quite get resolved. And we feel like we're alone. So many of us, walk away with health issues. And many of us walk away with relationships that have been literally destroyed because of the work. I mean, I know personally quite a few school leaders whose marriages and relationships with their children were literally torn apart by their commitment to this work. It's funny how there's so much said about, making sure that you're addressing the social emotional needs of students, making sure you're checking in with families, making sure we're looking after our teachers, our staff. But I always ask this question. I ask this question publicly now, but I've asked this question privately to my colleagues. Who's looking out for the principal, the assistant principal, the 1 or 2 or 3 people in the building who at the end of the day all falls on their shoulders? If there's a student in crises, it's them. If there's a teacher in crises, it's them. If there's conflict between students, between teachers, between parents, between families, it falls on them. Who looks out for their mental well-being, for their social emotional health? It's funny. I think of the documentary "Waiting for Superman." I think Jeffrey Canada and Harlem Student Zone, and I say in making a connection to that too often, school leaders are expected to be Superman and Superwomen, expected to be the Avengers, to be superheroes, to be all powerful. And if there's a problem, we have the answer. We know what to do. We do it immediately. If no matter what it is, if there's a problem, it's you have the answer. You must have the answer. And again, no one ever really checks in on us. And if you're a school leader, you're in a good school community district, you may have colleagues. You might have a superintendent who intentionally says, "Hey, how are you doing?" But let's be honest here, that's rare. That is super rare. I've been fortunate. I want to give a shout out to the Wolf Pack. This is a cohort of principals that I was with as the inaugural cohort of the Gray Fellows here in New York City. And I've had that. I've had, 19 other school leaders, who I know I can reach out to and say, "Hey, how do I handle this?" Or even, "Hey, I'm going through it." Not everyone has that. I've been fortunate as this year a member of the Con Fellows, being able to have colleagues, not just here in New York City, but across the country in other cities that I can reach out to and say, "Hey, how would you handle this?" Or, "Hey, what should I do about this?" But at the end of the day, we still have to live in our own heads, in our own hearts, in our own spirits, in our own bodies. And there's so much sometimes we don't even have the language to articulate what we're going through. And at some point in time, we all have to ask ourselves, are you still as effective as you want to be? Michael Jordan, the greatest ball player who ever lived. I don't care. Some of you might say, "Nah, it's LeBron and Kobe, God rest his soul," but Jordan did it better than anybody else, in my opinion. Is he still playing to this day? He's the greatest. Is he still playing? Wayne Gretzky. I grew up in Los Angeles. The LA Kings. One of the greatest, if not the greatest. Is he still playing? At some point in time, no matter how good you are at a thing or how devoted you are to it, you have to ask yourself, are you still as impactful as you want to be? You might still be better than most, but are you as impactful as you want to be? Jordan was still better than probably 90% of the guys playing in the NBA his last season, because he was still Michael Jordan. But he had to make a decision. And please don't think I'm here comparing myself to Jordan, because I'm being the greatest. Not at all. But I'm saying this to everyone out there who feels like I can't move. I'm going to tell you this right now. I did not quit as an educator. I want to make that very clear because that question did come up, you know, and I respect that question. That question, I did not quit. What I've chosen to do is say my skill sets no longer quite fit what I'm doing here. I'm going to go take my skill sets and my commitments to educating young people and go do it over here in a different kind of way and figure out how can I do that. Because at the end of the day, if you're a teacher, you're an administrator, you're degreed up. You are degreed up. You have a bachelor's. So in some cases, I mean, if you're in New York City, on average, you have 2 or 3 master's degrees. Then if you couple that with your experience, you know, as a school leader, as an assistant principal, as a principal, you are the CEO of a small company. Actually, you're CEO of a medium-sized company because some of our schools, our school budgets are in the millions. You know, and you make decisions every day from budgeting to marketing to recruitment to staffing and all these different things that CEOs of Fortune 1,000 companies and 500 companies and 100 companies don't even have to split their minds in so many different directions. But we do it all the time. If you're a teacher in a classroom, an urban classroom, think about this. How many decisions do you have to make in a period? As you're teaching and you have 25, 30 kids in the classroom and you're navigating that space and making sure that everybody's getting what they need. Think about how many decisions you are making every minute. And you're trying to tell me that you are stuck in just that role? I don't believe so. I believe as more people being educated and being grew for their professions, that we make space for them to support and develop them. And then we take our high-level skills and find other ways to impact the system to make it better for everyone who is part of it, for our students, for our families, and for those who all the work in it. All right, at this point in time, I feel like I'm rambling. I just want to say one more time, I'm so thankful, I'm so grateful to all of you. And please, this is not about this is not about likes and follows and all that stuff. I genuinely, you know, I'm humbled that I've been able to spark a conversation, and I'm asking to please continue to share this content. You know, this my post, let people read it, and I want to encourage people to not. First of all, one thing I want to say before I jump off. I am not here saying, hey, quit your job and go do something else. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just sharing my story. But what I am saying is this. Pause and take inventory of you in your life and how you're functioning in your work. Are you taking care of yourself? Are you the healthiest you that you can be? Are you ensuring that you don't become a statistic? That you're not incurring health problems, social emotional problems, destroying your personal life and your family life and all those things, and severing and damaging those relationships with your spouse and your children and even the extended network of people that love you, because you're so wound up tight in whatever your role is, and then at the same time, you're just kind of like carrying the burden of the world on your shoulders, and you're not saying anything to anyone, and you're just keeping it all inside. Stress is real, and stress will kill you. Facts. We all know this. We all know this. We've all heard those stories of that principal or that teacher or that person that had a heart attack at the job or in their office or all kinds of other ailments because they weren't healthy, they were stressed, and all kinds of stuff. We are educators. We are teachers. And if we're not living our best lives, what are we really teaching those that we're responsible for teaching? If you're not living your best life as a teacher, what are you really teaching your students? If you're not, living your best life as an assistant principal, as a dean, then what are you showing your teachers? As a principal, if you're not living your best life, your best, healthiest life? What kind of role model are you to your community? And that's all I'm saying. That's what I'm asking you to do. Take inventory of the life you're living and making sure that you're living the best life possible. You know, it won't happen overnight. Make one decision. Pick one thing that you're saying, okay, for moving forward, I'm going to do this one thing to make sure that I'm living my best life. That's all I'm asking. So please continue to, talk about this, share this. And those of you who are on YouTube watching this right now, I must do this because it's just part of the game. Just make sure, you take the time out to subscribe, give me a thumbs up, even a thumbs down, comment, so this YouTube algorithm will push this content out there. And I'm going to continue to post content more frequently, more written format, more video, and also audio for the podcast as well. This is Uche and Joker Sneaker Principal. Thank you so much. I appreciate all of you. Much love. And I think that's it for right now. All right. I'll see y'all soon. All right. Peace.
And now he's been promoted. His job, principal.